Momo,
Yo,
have you ever...
how are you doing?
I'm good. It's a nice early...
Good morning, Nachi.
Good morning. Good morning.
Right?
Good morning. Have you ever done Hisbodedus?
Yeah, I have. Hisbodedus is a very big Indian. Modern day Hisbodedus in particular.
Really?
Meditation. And it's very available to us.
Well, it's available in part because of our guest that we have on this episode.
Yeah, good man. Good dude.
Gedale Fenster. You may have heard about him. Maybe you haven't. If you have heard of him, you probably are a very avid follower. He has such a strong following. He speaks all around the world, and he fills up shuls, and he spreads the good word.
Yeah, and he really invites people to look beyond the surface, right? You look at him, and he looks like he might be the coolest guy you've ever seen.
Yeah.
And then you listen to him, and you hear the chassidus and the breast of a Torah that fills him up, that he's overflowing with. It's pretty cool.
He's got quite the journey, and we delve into it here on this episode of Meaningful People.
Yeah.
But we want to tell you first a little bit about our friends at Bridge Credit Solutions.
Bridge Credit Solutions.
The time of you walking around with a bad credit are over. You need to reach out to Bridge Credit Solutions.
You really do, by the way.
It's like, in 2022, why have bad credit unless you just don't pay your bills?
There's no reason to. There's no reason to not pay your bills.
That's A.
But if anything falls through the cracks, take a look at Bridge Credit Solutions.
So go ahead, really, really simply, in the show notes here, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, there's a link. You can just hit them up on WhatsApp and just like very easily ask them a few questions, see if they're the right fit for you. Or if you're watching on YouTube, it's here in the description as well. Just go reach out to Bridge Credit Solutions and enjoy this episode.
You are listening to the Meaningful People podcast.
The podcast featuring our nation's most impactful, influential,
and meaningful people.
First name, Gedalia. Throw people off with the spelling. You throw people off with the spelling a little bit.
Because it's spelled in Spanish when I was, yeah, that's my English.
So interesting.
But non-Jewish people, they don't know Gedalia, but I go by Gedalia.
Because I'm never sure, like, it's
Gedalia.
Gedale. So it's like...
that was my name in Colombia. So that was how they spelled it. But I never changed it to Gedalia.
Gedale Fenster.
Gedale Fenster.
Welcome.
Welcome,
Thank
yeah.
you.
So you grew up in Colombia?
I was born in Colombia.
Colombia.
Yes.
How was that?
It's a jungle.
Is it really?
Colombia is a jungle.
Literally, figuratively.
Colombia is a jungle in all ways. The headquarters of all the Klippas are in Colombia.
Headquarters of all the Klippa. How long...
all the Israelis go to Colombia.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, like the soldiers, they
go to Colombia.
Migrate to Colombia.
Correct.
Why is that?
They go searching and they get lost, unfortunately.
And they go back home.
If they go back home.
Sometimes finding oneself, the search is part of the journey.
Exactly.
It's funny, we never have guests come early. Like I think you're like one of the first guests to come early.
We learned a lot about punctuality and being,
yes. What's your...
The way you do anything is the way you do everything.
The way you do anything is the way you do everything. So your punctuality is something that's important to you.
Yes.
I'm guessing that's not just one thing that's important to you. It's part of a whole series
It's a no-nonsense attitude. Because you need a lot of strength when you're going through the hard times. You have to have a lot of discipline. If you can have discipline, you're going to end up getting what you want in life. But if there's no discipline, specifically that's the times where we're most likely not to have discipline, when we're mentally out of it and we're going through pain. That's the time you really, really got to, have discipline. When you're down, when you're down in the third quarter by 20 points, it's not the time to get lazy. It's the time to get discipline. I love sports because there's so much spirituality in sports that you can connect to serving Hashem.
Yeah.
I see so much there.
I totally agree with you.
I'm surprised that people don't see that more. Like I can go watch a game and I can see like the Kabbalah of the game.
It's so funny, but I would think it's the opposite. Like, be disciplined when you're up 20 because that sets the habits for when you're down 20.
Well, Rav Nachman says the opposite.
Really?
He says when you're down, he says do what you do at the end in the beginning. You understand?
Daven like it's at the end in the beginning.
Correct.
Like when someone's...
Get to a point where you don't have to fall. But if you fall, that's where your danger, when we have, when the Jews were attacked by Amalek, that's the time that they had to... When you're weak is when the Yetzer Hara is going to get you most.
Speaking, I guess, of hard times, of hardships.
Have we started yet or no?
We started.
Oh, wow.
We started a while ago.
Wow.
That's not his
beautiful.
style. He likes
That's
to just
not. I figured 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
We have started.
Wow.
Like we're almost done.
We're well into the episode
That's
right
so
now.
funny.
That's my. That's like the goal is like have a guest go. Did we start? What?
Right.
Like we have
We so started.
We have 4 minutes
Beautiful.
left. What do you mean did we start? And the time goes by really quick.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited to try to pack in as much as we can here.
Beautiful.
But I want to start off now that we got some background. I know that you're from Colombia. I want to start off and hear a little bit about your story. You mentioned about the hard times, and it seems like that's a lot of what you went through. And I'd love to hear the origin story of Gedale Fenster and
Okay.
where you are today.
Well, I was born in Colombia. I came here when I was 8 years old. I basically grew up in my uncle's businesses, which basically taught me more in my uncle's businesses as a teenager than I learned in college. I basically learned about psychology, how to sell customers, everything. It was one of the greatest education. And then after that, unfortunately, in Miami, I got involved into party planning and throwing parties and a little bit of the get rich or die trying mindset in Miami. Obviously, the allure of Miami, what it brings you. And then I fell into a very, very, very dark spot in my life. I was completely depressed. Unfortunately, at the time, I was not dating the right kind of girls. And it was a very, very dark spot in my life. And I was just empty. I felt really, really empty. No matter what game I went to or what place I went to, I was just completely feel empty. And then I was really asking God to help me. I was very disconnected. And this is where I found Rabbi Nachman's teachings. I actually went to somebody's house. He had a minion in his house at one time. Prayer for me was like something like, no big deal. It was a Shabbat, like just showed up like at 11 o'clock, which is so funny because now I'm waking up at 4 o'clock to pray. It's just prayer for me. It was so concealed from me that I was like, what is this? So I showed up at a particular guy's house and I found a book called Advice. And then in that book, Advice, I opened it up. Oh, cute, advice. And it said, sexual impurity leads to poverty. So at that time, I was like, oh my God, what does one thing have to do with the other? What does my impurity have to do with the other? And then it talked about the Tikkun HaKlali and the Psalms of Rabbi Nachman, etc. This is when I was around 20. And all of a sudden, I started getting very, very interested in it. And next thing you know, I was very careful in that department. I started reading the Tikkun HaKlali. And all of a sudden, it was like a major shift of consciousness. I don't know where this light came from, but it was like a light from above that I got, that I believed in it 100%. A lot of times our life comes down to our decisions. So you can look at a book. Oh, this is nice. Which rabbi is saying this? Typical Jew today. Which rabbi? How does he know? Does this mean today? They'll find 1,000 ways, to find an excuse because we think we know everything, of course. So I really, as I didn't know better, so I was so simple and said, wow, sexual impurity to poverty. This is the cause of all my problems. And as soon as I did that, my whole mazal opened up. I ended up going into a public adjusting business and becoming very, very successful. So luckily, I saw results very, very fast in this area. And I said, wow, the rest of my life, because of what happened to me, I'm going to spend time talking to everybody about this Tikkun HaKlali, which is something in my podcast. Today, Baruch Hashem, we have a podcast, a very successful podcast. I think we have 35,000 people on WhatsApp and Spotify, etc. And so a lot of the stuff that I recognize is dealing with this department, specifically with guys. And we don't know about it. And how sexual purity changes the way you think, and it's connected to depression, etc. So that's how I got into spirituality, was from Rabbi Nachman. Rabbi Nachman changed my life. And I owe everything to Rabbi Nachman's teachings.
That's amazing. I want to double click on the way that you framed something. You said that you were living a certain lifestyle, and no matter how glamorous it was the thread of emptiness was flowing through all of those experiences. And obviously where you are today, I think you're uniquely positioned to give people hope that if they are living their life in that manner and they're feeling that emptiness, to give hope that there is a way to shift. You mentioned a shift of consciousness. I've heard you speak of Meichin de Gadlus and Meichin de Katnus. Maybe if you can just expand a little bit on zeroing in on that emptiness and then sort of framing what is Meichin de Gadlus, what is Meichin de Katnus, and how does one make that shift?
Okay, great question. So back then, for example, I remember one day going to like a Dolphins game in the morning, a Heat game at night, and being a party promoter. So I had like nothing to be completely upset about. Like, what's the matter?
Yeah.
You're living like the perfect life. And how could you come home like still needing something to do? It was almost like a hungry ghost. Like no matter what you gave it, it's still hungry. And that's the problem with our ego. It's if we don't have anything and no meaning in our life, it's just you're filling up like a hungry ghost. And spirituality allows you to be happy with less. It doesn't mean you have to be a nebach or just, stay away from physicality or spirituality, but you don't constantly need more. That itself fulfills you. You're in the right moment. Our ego is always trying to take us from one moment to another moment. You have this, well, you need this to be happy. You need that to be happy. And you need that to be happy. With spirituality, it gives you a sense of calmness. I'm good in the moment. I have nowhere else to be.
Right.
This is like, one of the greatest things about Shabbat, I would say, is people that keep Shabbat, you can give them $1 billion. They wouldn't, would do nothing to get rid of it, because it gives you that calmness that there's nowhere else to be. This is where you need to be. But because of our mindset of slavery, we always think we need more and more and more. And the non-attachment is really the biggest form of slavery, of freedom, not to be attached to anything. So today, unfortunately, we become attached to things. And the more we become attached to things, the more likely we're going to become depressed and empty out of it, because you're never going to have half of what you want in life. So the more you run after it, the more empty you're going to feel, which is going to disconnect you from your creator and leave you in a very, very bad mood. I would say mochem the kadnut in spirit, in English terms, in practical terms, is in a bad mood, like feeling like you're not getting what you're supposed to, feeling like your creator is giving you 10 cents on the dollar, and just feeling like constantly ungrateful for anything, even though you can have a million things in your life, but you constantly feel empty.
This is like the stuff Rebbeim speak about with their Talmidim. They say even Bill Gates isn't happy, and even Bezos, and it's like money isn't it. It's sort of like candy.
Right.
They might be happy.
No, they might be
happy. It won't
happy.
be a result of their wealth. It'll be despite it.
It makes you comfortable. Money makes you comfortable, allows you to do things, but it doesn't. I think one of the greatest lines from Tony Robbins is the only difference between having money and not having money is money allows you to show up to your problems in a Bentley.
Yeah.
That's pretty much. But you're still going to have all these problems, and a lot of the followers that I speak about, the problem with chasing it instead of attracting it. Like we have an amazing concept called bitachon, which is trusting in God. When you have trust in God and you have joy, you actually attract things in your life. And I'm going to be honest with you, most of the things in my life that I got, I didn't even ask for them. I was just in a good place and they came to me. Mm-hmm. My podcast, my rehab, my hotel that I got after COVID. I can name you 1,000 things. My wife. When you're in a good place and you feel abundant comes to you. Mm-hmm. But when you always feel like you're never getting enough, and you always feel like you need something to fix it, it runs away from you. And this is an area of consciousness that I try to get yourself to a place of happiness. Be happy where you are, no matter what you're going through, and that's going to bring you things in life. But when you need something to fix it or something to there's a never ending. You're never going to stop.
Yeah, I've heard a nice line. People are obsessed with having what they want, and the magic is wanting what you have.
Exactly. Correct. Beautiful. Same concept, which is bitachon. Bitachon is believing that at that moment, whatever your creator is about to give you is the best. And that itself is a form of, you can be content with that. And so when I'm in a place where I have a tendency of chasing this, I stop, put the brakes, work on happiness, work on simcha, work on gratitude. And that usually resolves the problem.
So people who don't know you, who are watching this and seeing this guy sitting there with the gel back hair and the black tie, they might say, well, this guy looks like he's got it all and he had it all, and what does he know about struggle? So let's discuss, I guess, what the lows look like in getting to the high, because I think the context is so important. Right. Because, you didn't have an easy life. You had it. Right. You had struggles. You had hardships. So I think it's always, important if we can get a little bit vulnerable and speak about those, just for listeners, for ourselves even, just to hear that.
So one of the greatest lines that Reb Nachman spoke about is the difference between depression and a broken heart. So when I'm in a place where I'm broken, many times spiritually, there's times where I have no energy to pray. With the relationships, or I've gone through divorce. I lost my son 4 months ago. There's definitely brokenness. There's a lot of pain in this world. There's no question. But Reb Nachman gave us the ability to go into a broken heart instead of depression. Broken heart is very different, because after broken heart comes joy. After depression comes anger and rage. Big difference. Reb Nachman says one is from the heart. One is a prayer out of complete being lost, asking for help. Another prayer is a prayer, the world is unfair, there's injustice, and my creator we create a specific image of our creator. So just that belief system that our creator is out to punish us and etc. We have a very, as we grew up as children, we think he's a cartoon figure out to punish you. So unfortunately today we have a lot of people have a very immature relationship with their creator. Unfortunately, they could wear hats, they can wear this, they could be very religious, but they look at their creator as a person out to get them. It's a very immature consciousness. Rav Kook speaks about that. Anything but Ein Sof, which is the concept of unlimited to our creator, is completely a form of heresy, etc. So I always believe in situations where I'm lost, where I feel broken. I don't question my creator, I question my thinking. So I said, okay, I don't know everything. We already know that our sages tell us that the greatest level of knowledge is when you recognize you know nothing. Right. So even at the peak, where I'm going to be at the peak of peaks, I'm going to come to a realization that I know nothing. So it allows me to surrender when I don't understand things. It allows me to go into bittul, which is a form of closing my eyes to a much bigger picture that I don't understand. Mm-hmm. And allows me to work that I shouldn't have anger or anxiety, because at that moment, it's nothing to think about. It's a time to just be quiet.
It's beautiful. I think you can speak to a misconception that surrender, as you mentioned, mm-hmm. is a form of weakness. And those that study the Torah of Hasidus, they know that is the farthest thing from the truth.
Correct.
Can you unpack that concept of surrender?
Right. Surrender is not being passive. So actually, this week of the Sphira is all about surrendering.
Right.
Surrender is not being passive. It's not having low self-esteem and saying, I'll just get what I'll get. Surrendering is recognize you don't know anything. There's a much bigger picture happening. And Reb Natan gave us a beautiful example. He says, just like a seed, in order for a seed to become a tree, it has to go into the ground. If it doesn't go into the ground, it can never become a tree. So we have a problem today because of our immature control. We seek to constantly, because of our immature control, we're very controlling. We don't like to feel uncomfortable. We don't like to leave everything up to God. We have to worry all the time. So that doesn't allow the surrender process. So surrendering is really bittul, closing your eyes to a much bigger picture that you don't understand at this moment. And Emunah is all about not understanding. Emunah is completely, once you believe it, then you will see it. It's completely, if I need to see it to believe it, that means I'm insecure in my spirituality. I can't go daven and pray and learn, and when it comes up to show up to the big game, all of a sudden you're oh no, this is only for davening. No, this is the problem today. We're not, the way you do everything is the way you do anything. So when I say I'm learning this, when it comes to show up, you need to apply the tools. It's not, you don't just, what are you learning for? What are you praying for? For what? When we're praying, we're saying God surrounds a person with trust. A person with trust has mercy. When a person is learning, he's saying these words, they're not going into his heart. So this is why he has a hard time applying them in real life.
Mindfulness is a big part of what you're saying, being present. We're actually doing this. What time is it? It's before 9 a.m. I'm really curious, someone like you who really works on discipline and being mindful, living in the moment, what your morning routine looks like. I think everyone in the world has a different way they wake up in the morning. Some people wake up at 5, some people wake up at 8, some people daven at 10 a.m., some people daven at 5 a.m. It's so many different types. I'm curious what your morning routine looks like.
I'll tell you how I started. My morning routine before I started getting to Rabbi Nachman, forget about it. So I woke up what my body felt like. But then I started reading on Rabbi Nachman's teachings that waking up in the morning is not just a waking where your body feels. It's actually a mental thing. Most of us don't want to wake up in the morning because we can already predict the day. So we're very prone in the morning to not face the day. This is why nobody's waking up. Yay, I'm up in the morning. No, it's like you're fighting it.
Yeah.
Because the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, wants to keep you to sleep. He wants you to tell your day, this is the way your day is going to be. Go to sleep. Sleep is a concept. Our sages say that sleep is 1/60th of death. So sleep itself is a concept of, specifically if the sleep is, you're using sleep to avoid issues. Sleeping when you can't deal with things, that's emunah. But when you're using sleep to avoid issues, then you're really in a constriction consciousness. That's mochem katnut. That means I don't want to deal with today. Today I know what today's going to be like. We've already predicted the day. So Reb Nachman says, waking up when you're waking in the morning, it's not even, it's your attitude saying, I'm not avoiding anything. I'm facing the day. I'm taking responsibility for the day. So that itself breaks all judgment. Waking up in the morning is not just, you're going because you're breaking all judgments. Because judgments are connected to sleep.
Judgments also are what prevent us from being mindful.
Correct.
You're judging the moment.
Or for example, you lost a business deal last night. You wake up completely exhausted. You don't want to deal with today. Instead of saying, what do I need to work on? Instead of saying, why me? Why am I going through this? What do I need to do? And we learned this from Kobe Bryant, lahavdil.
Yeah.
When he used to lose a game, he used to wake up at 4 o'clock in the
Almost
morning.
a big Kobe guy, no?
Right?
LA boy.
People think that because I'm from LA.
I used to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning to practice. I'm like,
Right.
you learn from a guy like this guy can wake up in the morning. He should say, we lost the game tomorrow. But the fact that he had the koach to wake up in the morning and shoot basketballs at 4 o'clock in the morning, I said, I can do that. So I look at the mornings as not just waking up, it's taking advantage of, I'm facing my stuff, not stuffing my face. I'm facing my stuff. I mean, yes, there's stuff that I need to deal with in life. I'm taking responsibility by facing it, even if it's uncomfortable for me.
But like, how do you get past that uncomfort? Like I just listening to what you're saying, I can imagine a question that not me, but people would have.
Asking for a friend.
Asking for a friend. Yeah. Momo texted me the question. I can imagine that it's like, well, I don't want to deal with what I need to deal with.
Okay.
So I don't want to, like, yeah, I could totally wake up and shoot basketballs at 4 a.m. because that's awesome. That's enhancing my craft. But when I got to deal with garbage and just struggles and challenges, why wake up to that? Why jump to that?
If you have a struggle with faith, you're gonna have a struggle with pain. That's the problem. You have to
Just saying the faith.
You have to change your relationship to pain. Pain leads to growth. If you resist pain, it becomes suffering.
So that's the aside.
That's you can't. There's no
Pain can't be uncomfortable,
once I
or
recognize
shouldn't.
this, that pain itself is the key to growth. Then you start embracing it and you start building that resistance. Again, it's extremely comfortable. I'm not telling you there's nothing comfortable about what I do. But if you ask me today, do I have fulfillment in my life? I have drug rehab facilities. I have a podcast. I have do I have fulfillment? Absolutely. I have a ton of fulfillment, which leads me to happiness.
So, and I think also, just to stay there for a second, I think there's a misconception where there's this like period of time that requires endurance of pain, right, and not resisting pain, which would result in suffering.
Correct.
But once you plow through, then you hit this like renaissance, and you're golden, right?
Renaissance.
And in reality, it's a daily grind, and it's a daily process of being able to live in the discomfort and accepting whatever circumstances, right? It's not like, oh, check the box for a couple of days or even a couple of years and then
Daily
you're good.
grind.
This is the human condition, right?
I'm a very moody person in general. My Yetzer Hara, I'm a Scorpio, very moody.
I knew that when you hit me in the face earlier. That was just walks in the door. You don't see that.
I'm an extremely moody person. I have a lot of intense energy. And it's the same thing. I know. I look at resistance. The ego is trying to create resistance. Anywhere where there's resistance in my life, I know there's gold on the other side. But when I have, for example, there's no resistance when you go watch Netflix for 3 hours. There's no resistance when you go to a Knicks game. Oh, I forgot they're out of the playoffs.
Oh, thank
Real
you.
teams like the Heat and
Thank you,
and stuff like
Gedale.
that. But there's no resistance when you do easy things. I never saw a Jew having resistance going to a restaurant. Never saw, should I eat, should I not? But when it comes to davening, when it comes to working out, when it comes to meditation, when it comes to this, I can't. Well, how come? Why is one thing so easy and why is the other? Because that's where the success is. Where there's resistance. So I look at resistance as a tool to tell me, plow into this. You ask, go forgive that person. No, I can't forgive them. But you're going to feel better if you forgive them. Resistance. So I look at resistance as what I need to do. And many times, if I ask myself every single time, if I started doing things based on my mood, I would go 95% into comfort. Practically. I would practically. And I fight it every day. It's not something that I have in the bag.
That's probably what most of us. I mean, I do that.
I fight it every day.
I'm a comfort guy.
Yeah, we're all comfort. We don't want to deal with pain. We don't want to deal with pain. And the more you put yourself in this position to not to deal with pain, the worse it's going to become to get out of it.
And you're saying just embrace the pain.
There's no other option. There's no other option in life but to do this. Because once you start getting comfortable in one area, it's going to all of a sudden get comfortable in another area. Like practically right now, I'm learning Gemara Yevamos. Rabbi Stefansky. Amazing.
8-minute daf.
I can't stand it. I cannot stand it.
You can't stand what?
It's an ADHD disaster for me.
Ellie, you got to up your game.
He got me through it. He got me through Yevamos. He's guided me through it.
Yevamos is difficult.
It's ADHD nightmare for anybody. I can't deal with it.
You're saying Meaningful Minutes got to do something about Yevamos, huh? Like we got to.
It's the whole point is that's my resistance.
Right.
I don't want to deal with it. But I can't just say it's not for me. You can't say it's not for you every time, because then everything's not for you. And then you start becoming flaky. And then when you start becoming flaky, it leads to low self-esteem. And then you have low self-esteem, then you're blaming the whole world for your problems. And that's a whole different avenue. So It's either you decide to humble up, pay the price, or you're going to end up with low self-esteem. Because everything is difficult for you, you run away from.
You're somebody that deals with,
and you can see where that price is going to lead you to.
Right. You're someone who you deal with people who are in addiction.
Sure. We have addiction. So we have an addiction center called Evolutionist Treatment Center.
So you see pain.
I see people running away from pain and the price it costs. Absolutely. I see the price it costs thousands of times. So when I look at people running away from pain, I see the price. So when I look at that, I have no other option but to go into pain.
But something that maybe someone who, I think maybe everyone's addicted to something, right? Do you agree with that? Is that something, agree or disagree?
You have tendency for addictions or something. You just have to pick healthier addictions.
Right. So
exercise, et cetera, is a healthier addiction.
What's something that you, from your vantage point, having these rehab centers, you've seen from people who are going through addiction and overcome addiction, obviously with unhealthy things. Like what's a lesson that you learned firsthand from, I guess, addicts?
One of the lessons I've learned is just because somebody hurt you doesn't mean you have to hurt yourself. This is a very common thing that I've seen. For example, if somebody
hurt people
hurt others. And this is a very common thing. We never think about it twice. But for example, let's say somebody, hit your car. Are you going to go take your car now, smash into the wall?
Because it's going to hurt yourself, yeah. Or you're not going to even take your car and hit their car because it's going to hurt your car also.
Correct.
Right?
But somehow when hurt people hurt others, but when we're hurt by other people, we take it personal when we hurt ourselves. So that was one of the things. Don't take things personal. Hurt people hurt others. Be humble. Not everything's about you. It was a big message because everybody's there trying to run away from pain. But if they just reframe the pain, they wouldn't make it about them. They would recognize that person hurt me because he was hurt. So I learn every day things in my. There's not a day that I don't learn. It's the greatest education for me.
Right.
That I can apply the same principles to my classes. I can apply. There's so much knowledge that I get there, and Reb Nachman's teachings, and I just there's so much clarity that for me to do a podcast, it's become like almost thank God, a passionate something that I could just jump into.
Right.
It's not even about, it's like, I see it live. So what is there to talk about?
Yeah. We've had Rabbi Shais Taub on the show. Sure. and he's done some groundbreaking work in recovery and spirituality. And, you know, I've heard that the model of spirituality, it can benefit everyone walking planet Earth. For addicts, their life depends on it, of course. And if they don't adopt that manner of living, then it becomes, you know, very, very, very challenging to just function.
Right.
But what can you suggest those that maybe do not identify as an addict and are not struggling with the day-to-day of an addict, but how do we bring that model of spirituality and lend it to everyone else that might be struggling on their level?
Right. I mean, what practical levels, for example, what spirituality allows me to do is not to be so controlling. Spirituality, I don't have to, it keeps me in the moment. For example, you know, just look at anything in life, you know, that any time and space bothers us, it's because we're not in the moment. So if we're always running after things in life, we're not spiritual. For example, I'm spiritual. I'm very happy with my wife. But if I wasn't spiritual, I always think I can deserve more and more.
Right.
There's never enough. That's why the dating scene is such a disaster. Why is dating such a? Because everybody's. I could always do better. Fear of missing out. So without spirituality, I just came back from Beverly Hills just now. Without spirituality, you're just there's always more and more and more and more. It's your ego taking you. Spirituality keeps you in the moment. Allows you to be more, instead of doing, more into being. And spirituality gives you calmness. It gives you contentment. That's what I've seen spirituality does.
Did I miss the part where you said your morning routine? Like, did you say what time you wake up?
I wake up very early.
Because I don't think you did.
Keeping us on task.
I wake up at 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock in the morning.
I wake up at 4 o'clock.
I also.
I have a.
No, I'm kidding.
I have a beautiful. I'm on a half an acre on the water in Miami. So I'll start with I'll start doing Tikkun Hatzot, which is it's a prayer of Rabbi Nachman of the crying out for the temple. I'll do Tikkun HaKlali, then I'll do my 45 minute meditation. His
45 minutes.
Talking to God.
Whoa.
Then I'll do some breathing. I'll go into
Wim Hof.
Wim Hof breathing.
Could you what is the, I've been hearing a lot about this Wim Hof breathing.
Wim Hof breathing, Wim Hof basically, he's amazing. I talked about, it allows you basically to open up the same receptors as marijuana. You can do it through breathing. Pretty much, he says, get high in your own supply. So we can get to very...
Cheaper.
Remember, this is not a new thing, by the way.
Right.
Reb Nachman speaks about the kotzer ruach. The Jews in Egypt, they had a kotzer ruach. They couldn't breathe. The way we breathe and the way we think are very, very connected. Mm-hmm. So if we have a very kotzer ruach, if we can't breathe, we're not thinking properly. So sometimes we're overwhelmed, et cetera, in life. Sometimes you have to stop. Get some oxygen in your brain so you can think differently. So he has 11-minute YouTube video, beginners, and it can almost take away anxiety. It's an unbelievable thing. So anytime that I'm a little constricted or I need to open up a little bit, instead of smoking, I don't smoke obviously, I breathe. And that opens up areas in your brain and allows you to connect to your creator better, etc.
That sounds like fun.
It's awesome.
You're a Wim Hof?
Try
Amazing.
nothing.
And then I'll take a cold plunge. I'll go into the
cold
mikvah
plunge.
and all
Like,
that.
I always wondered how athletes do those ice baths.
It's because it opens up certain areas of your brain, and it gives you like dopamine and serotonin naturally.
And that like negates the pain.
It changes your mood. Your mood. It's an unbelievable thing.
We'll be right back to this episode of the Meaningful People podcast. But first, having a bad throat session over here.
It's really good.
But we want to talk about Turo University.
Turo University.
What's your favorite part about Turo?
My favorite part about Turo is how much there is. Like, there's so much available. It's even in the name, right? /more.
Yeah.
Right? There really is more. And regardless of what you want to pursue in your education,
They have it.
they have it.
Right. So you might be around that age, or you may be any age, and you want to further your education. As a frum Jew, there's really one major place to look at.
It's a really, really fantastic option. If you're looking to get educated, check out Turo University.
Turo.edu/more. You almost got their website.
I almost got it.
You went.
I know the website's always like your thing.
Yeah, I know. And numbers. Who remembers AMR? I still remember AMR's number. But Turo University, it's the place to go to. So go ahead, reach out to them. Head to turo.edu/more and learn about how you can further your education.
Website just flows right out of him, that
Yes,
website.
yes. You can wake me up in the middle of the night. I'll know that website by heart. Okay? Turo.edu/more. Check them out.
To your question, I think it's mind over matter, right? Our minds tell ourselves that we're constricted and we cannot handle
Correct.
that cold.
Correct.
Our
Sometimes
bodies
you
are
gotta take a time
actually
out.
able to handle much more than our mind tells us we're
100%.
able to. And Wim Hof's techniques help us put our mind over the matter.
I've always dreamed to go to one of his seminars in wherever he has, Iceland or Russia. And
It would
to
be
do-
appropriate if it was
and to do
Iceland,
that.
right? For
Yeah.
ice bath.
But I'm actually installing a cold plunge in my house. I went to Dubai. I was on vacation in Dubai, in the particular hotel that I stayed at. They
The
had
second most Jewish place in the world right now.
exactly,
Israel's 1, Dubai's 2,
exactly.
5 times 3.
So they had like a hot and cold combination, and I came out of there like almost like high. I'm like, oh my God, I can get into such a high peak state. Tony Robbins does it. Just put you in that state, like without nothing but plunging in a cold bath, and what it does to your brain is unbelievable.
That's so interesting. Like, are you telling me that right now, besides from me, just anybody who's listening right now can achieve what you've achieved with that mindfulness, that just mind over matter through breathing?
Anybody can. I you know, it's funny. I have addicts that do it, and they're so shocked because they're spending their whole days on the heroin and this. But you can just breathe and you can change the way you feel. Absolutely.
That's like game changer.
It is 100%. But what do we say? We don't have time. Do you understand the problem?
Sorry, I started posting.
Well, when you wake
you
up at
understand-
4 a.m., you just found a lot of time.
Yeah, that's like 4
I wake
hours.
up
right
because
there.
I do a little yoga also. I stretch out. I learn. I prepare for my class for that day. But that's my power hour. I don't look at that as a draining. I actually look at it as oxygen.
When do you go to sleep?
I go to sleep at 10:30.
Okay.
There's no point to be up at 11:30, 12 o'clock.
Depends which scene
I'll
you're
go
watching.
out at night. I'll
West
go out
Coast?
once or twice a week. I won't be that those days that I don't. But the majority, if I want to have good days, I want to have clarity. Remember, I have to do a class every day.
Right.
My podcast is every day. So I have to come up with a new idea, a new concept, and usually I get it through prayer.
Are you?
We're slacking off here, Nachi, once a week.
What are we
here.
doing once a week? Like, let's do it. See you tomorrow at 4. Are you tired? Like in general?
Sometimes
like,
in the afternoon, I will take a 15-minute power nap.
I'm really curious because I'll tell you, for myself, I always talk about this with my wife. I want to wake up before the sun is up because I always feel like it's before I know it, it's 3 o'clock. And I'm like, what just happened? And then
Days are gone.
kids come home and it's just gone.
Done. You don't feel productive.
I want, and there are a few times, it sounds there are a few times I woke up before 7, you know, like there are a few times where I have woken up much earlier and by the time 10 a.m. rolls around, I feel like I lived an entire extra day.
Right.
But I don't know. I can't keep to it. I can't have that.
You have to pray. You have to have your intention correct. Your intention has to be, I want to be able to speak to my creator. I want to be able to have more simcha in the day. Your intention, for example, I was meeting with a guy in LA and he says, you know, he's married with 3 kids. So your intention is very important. And he's like, I want to lose weight. Help me lose weight. I'm like, it's like 6 o'clock in the morning in LA. And so did you try intermediate fasting, time restricted eating, etc.? You tried, yeah. I know all of this and I know why I'm not losing weight. So I said, what are you asking me for? He says, I know if I lose weight, I'm going to start cheating on my wife. So there's your answer. So work
sponsored
on
by
being
Izzy's barbecue. Yeah.
Work on shmirat, work on
Yeah.
yourself in this area, and then the weight will come up. But you can see if the intention is not there. You could see why we're not getting it. So the intention should be positive. And then usually we end up getting what we want in life. Get the intention right. That's kavanah. Get the intention. Are you praying to connect or are you praying to get? Like, that's a big difference. If I'm praying to connect, I'm not interested in getting. But if I'm only praying to get and I don't get, I'm checking out when I'm not getting. So I try to get when things are, sometimes I work on my intentions. Is my intentions the right way? Do I have the right intentions in doing this?
Yeah. I want to shift gears for a moment. You mentioned some of the work that you do in the context of your own rehab and working with people that identify as addicts with whatever they're struggling with. And I think a lot of our listeners are at a stage of their life where they're exploring different things, they're young, and they're going out, and with the legalization of different substances, the access is all there, and maybe they've experienced it,
Right.
but maybe they're not addicts yet, right? And they're still in that phase where they're developing. And going to a rehab would probably be, over-treating and would be like very dramatic move. But what can they do to sort of focus themselves and zero in and from everything that's distracting them?
I'm going to give you a good analogy. Even if they do have an addiction and they work on it, if they're not working on a spiritual awakening, if they don't look at an addiction as a spiritual awakening, nothing gives us a beautiful example. So if you take a matzah, we just finished Passover. You break it into two. What happens? Okay, you're not addicted to marijuana, now you're addicted to food. Another one's going to pop up.
Mm-hmm.
You're still running away from yourself, running away from pain. Only through prayer can you actually get rid of the addiction. The game of life is not to get high. The game of life is to be free. We're asked all the day. We're asking, please God, take us out of Egypt. Take us out of Egypt. We want to be free. We don't want to get high. Because once you taste something one time, and I had a gambling addiction. Once you taste something and it's a place you can go to when you have pain, not only do you have the problem of running away from pain, but now you have to deal with an addiction on itself.
Right.
So now you got to deal with the addiction. And now you got to go back to the original issue that you were running away from.
Yeah. And
you understand the problem?
Yeah.
Yeah, that framework that you just laid out, I think is also very important for people to understand, where people assign so much importance to the way the person is experiencing addiction, right?
Right.
And it's really the symptom.
Exactly.
It's not the problem. It's where
Correct.
the person goes.
It's a solution
Correct.
to the problem. Correct. Exactly.
And they need a substitute solution.
They need to go and you understand what does a drug do to you practically? For example, if let's say I'm angry, I'm in a terrible mood. Next thing you know, I pop up, I take some alcohol. What happened? In 2 minutes, I just got to a higher level of consciousness. I don't feel fear. I don't feel anxiety. I don't feel shame anymore. So all of a sudden, what happens? In 2 minutes, you just went to a higher level of consciousness. So what happens, what a drug really does is it blocks out the ego. What's making you feel terrible in the first place?
Mm.
So why wouldn't you want to do it? You'd almost be abnormal not to want to use, to be able to go into a higher level of consciousness in 2 minutes.
Right.
So what happens afterwards?
Come crashing
Come
down.
back with shame, because what happens? You didn't earn it.
Mm.
You didn't earn that high. So that's ultimately, it's funny how I always say the Sfira to Homer, the 49 days of counting the Omer to Shavuos, it's almost the identical message of a drug addiction. We were all of a sudden, imagine you're a janitor. Next thing you know, you're the CEO of the company the first day. And now you have 49 days to get there. And all you're doing is working on your character to get to that state. So the same thing, the person can get to through recovery, he can get to a place where he's already in that higher consciousness. He doesn't need to use anymore. The pain becomes the purpose. So there's no need to use anymore. So there's no solution until that person creates a spiritual awakening. That's the bottom line. He has to have a spiritual awakening. Otherwise, it's just one addiction to another addiction. The addiction's only, again, telling you what you're running away from.
Mm-hmm.
Is your response to pain. Is you're not looking at pain as growth. You're looking at pain as pain's making you have low self-esteem.
I think I've heard from you that you can identify what the person's running from depending on where they run to.
Sure. It's funny because you see this, like, for example, cocaine. It makes you have more confidence. So you can see the person's low confidence. Anger is very connected to the liver, which is alcoholics, right? So anger, alcoholics, it gives them control, power, which is what anger does. Heroin, people are seeking heroin for love, the love they never had. Marijuana, anxiety. Instead of bitachon, marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
You see very connected to what the specific drug of choice, specifically the issue in the person's life.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's amazing. Because I could almost tell what the guy's issue is. Like some of the Syrian community, cocaine is their issue. They're not taking heroin. The Hasidic community, God forbid, we're not. But you can see people. We're not generalizing, but people that had no love, they didn't get accepted. They're on heroin. You don't see the Syrians on heroin. You see them on cocaine. You see them on. It's just an amazing thing when you see the culture of what's needed in that culture ends up becoming an addiction to specific things. I see it black and white.
And I guess it's
pretty crazy. I mean, it's pretty crazy, but you just see the culture of every sector. They're connected to a specific thing. They have issues with pressure, with self-esteem is my self-worth is my net worth. Chassidim acceptance. It's just we're all connected to a specific thing. And I'm out of the box. I just see it as a non-judgmental. Okay, how can I help
you
this
haven't
person?
seen the box in a while.
I have no box. I have Reb Nachman. This is my only box.
Yeah.
By the way, in Breslau, we don't have a dress code. There's no dress code.
right.
It's because it's the inner game, not the outer game that you have to work on.
No dress code, says the guy coming with a black tie and a suit.
It's just
He really likes your black tie, by the way, it appears.
I know.
I normally don't wear black ties, but I said, you know what? I'm trying to change it up a little bit.
No, I like it. It's a good look. You can wear that tonight by your event.
Tonight, I'm going to wear it tonight. But
What event?
Right? Whoever's listening, this event
I don't want to
happened a while
promote the
ago.
event because the event has been sold out a week
okay.
ago. We have an event tonight at Park East.
So you speak around the world. Like you travel and you go on these tours.
After COVID, right. After now, we're going to start traveling again. Not that I couldn't care. I could have traveled in the middle of COVID, but
Right.
I'm not going to go with this, double vax thing and this whole situation.
Yeah.
Not for me. The only thing I'm afraid of is God.
Yeah.
None of this stuff I'm afraid about.
So tell us about the stuff that you're doing, speaking in different communities, and what the message is. I mean, I've seen some videos. I've seen the crowds. I know there are thousands of people that pack into. And I think it's also very interesting. We discussed this probably a few times, Momo, with different guests, or maybe we didn't. Maybe we discussed it by ourselves. But people will turn on this episode on YouTube and see the thumbnail and see, well, here's this guy, clean shaven, hair slicked back, looks like, straight out of GQ. If I ever looked at, I don't know what GQ is, but whatever. And they'd say, well, what is he? Like, he's talking Torah, but I think slowly but surely it's happening a lot in this generation where it doesn't matter what you look like. There are people sharing Torah,
Right.
Like, look, Ali Stefanski doesn't have a beard. Shirley Bornstein doesn't have a beard. These guys, they don't look like the typical Rebbeim, and they're being Marbitz Torah and on the highest level ever. And so here you are, you're traveling around the world, and you're not going into these places and speaking about addiction or drug rehab. You're speaking about Torah.
Correct. Well, it's all Torah, by the way.
Yeah.
It's the problem today is the packaging is off.
We're bad at marketing.
We're not good at marketing. You have to change the marketing. And you have to I recognize that 90% of people are not affiliated. And sometimes they've had traumatic experiences with specific rabbis in specific situations. And they need I have to dress like this sometimes just to be able to. First of all, that's my style. I like to dress nice. There's nothing wrong with it. You have to get a certain customer. And, sometimes, again, we're very judgmental also.
Yeah.
I'm afraid to be religious because I don't want to become this, and this, or I'm afraid to do this. So I sort of tell them it's okay. We're a very all or nothing thing. Or if I'm going to keep Shabbos, I can't be around this friend anymore. Okay? Just our mentality is very all or nothing. We're very judgmental. So we have to stop judging and seeing whoever you can get the best from in life. So I try to create it very practical. And at the end of the day, Baruch Hashem, we've gotten a lot of success getting people with, they were afraid to jump in. They were afraid to keep Shabbos. They were afraid to start praying. They were afraid to go to shul. They were afraid. And now they're embracing it. Bringing the Chassidim back. Bringing these guys that left, bringing them back through love. I never tell people God's going to punish you. God forbid. I always say you're leaving a lot of stuff on the table. Why would you leave such things on the table?
Yeah, I think also you're
present it differently.
I think you're getting through to people through your authenticity, unapologetically just being who you are and not having to conform to any box.
Couldn't care less.
And I think that's awesome.
Could not care less.
Why not?
I don't like the way you dress. I don't like this. I don't like this. Because they're nothing to... The fact that you're judging already, it means you're in a very low consciousness.
So you don't care about the people who are judging?
I couldn't care less because the fact that you're judging is your insecurity. What's it got to do with me?
This seems like I'm gonna cut that part out.
Do you understand?
Looks like a fight. It looks like you're fighting me.
No, but I'm just saying,
cut that part. I'm gonna put that.
cut it out, Nachi.
No, that's the ad.
Yeah.
I'm gonna promote
why
it
would
then.
I go down
Nachi,
to
why are you judging me?
forward to somebody to get his approval? Why would I even go there? Anybody it's immaturity to judge another person. I listen to I have my rabbis are all holy rabbis, and I listen to sometimes guys like Tony Robbins. I listen to guys like Andrew Huber. Wherever I can get the truth from, wherever I can get life from in that area, I'll listen to it. The Baal Shem Tov says you can learn anything from anywhere.
Yeah, it's very freeing.
Wherever you go, why do I need to go and judge the guy's dress code? I don't even know how people think like that.
It's very freeing.
What do you care what I dress like? You pay my bill, you pay my Amex bill. What do you care what I dress like? I can tell you what I like to do, what I eat, where, etc. What do you care what I dress like?
It's very freeing to stop judging someone for sinning differently than you.
I mean, it's showing you what are you learning about. I mean, are we suffering? The 24,000 students, they didn't die because they were not religious enough. They died because they were not respecting each other. There was judgment. There was din. I mean, we're not getting the big picture. We're not seeing the big picture, and this is what I scream. Like, how could you be and do this and learn all, and you're judging? You're missing the whole point. You know,
Those who
it's
are
like a vegan eating after he's done with the show.
Yeah.
He sticks a hamburger in his face. Like, they're not getting. You're not getting the big picture.
you can speak to that camera right there for those who are judging people in their lives, family, friends. What would you tell them?
Stay in your lane. I would. You know what? Actually, Carl Jung says a great line. He says, if you know your own pain, you know how much it is to work on yourself. Don't judge others, because I know what it is to work on myself. I know
It's like a defense mechanism, though. No, like
it's all projection instead of reflection. Exactly. It's only it is you're judging people just so to take the spotlight off of you. But when you're doing his bodhidut and you're doing this work and you know how much work you have to do on yourself, you don't even have time to think about judging other people. It's opposite. You wouldn't even have time for it. But when you don't spend any time on yourself or any time working on yourself, and then you're busy judging the world, what do you think? You're just projecting instead of reflecting.
that's so interesting. That also works probably in a business sense. Like the CEO of Apple shouldn't know what Samsung's up to. Like they should just be focused on what they're rolling out, how much they're going to rip off their customers on the next iPhone. Like that should be, or how many cameras they're going to have.
Or if they can learn. Listen, if you want to learn from people, you learn from people. But judgment itself, when the Baal Shem Tov says, and by the way, all these teachings are not. These are from the Baal Shem Tov. Right. Baal Shem Tov says if you see something in another person you don't like, it's because you have that in yourself. So when I judging somebody, instead of doing tshuva and say, wow, why am I judging that person? I'm bringing judgment on me. Our sages say whoever judges others favorably, he gets judged favorably. So you're actually hurting yourself. So I really believe in these teachings. When the Baal Shem Tov says, listen, if something in that person you don't like, then you have to work on yourself. I really believe in that.
Right.
You can't just pick and choose what you want to believe in, what you don't want to believe, etc.
You're again going back a little bit to pain. You had mentioned that your son passed away pretty recently, and I know that you shortly after started speaking again, and you were out there, and that whole process of going through so much pain and then finding your footing again. What was that? What was that like?
I was able to channel that pain from a year ago, when he was sick for a year and it was just a very dark time. It was the middle right after COVID. He was sick in 2000. I would see him constantly he had cancer before,
right?
So this is the second time. It was a lot of surrendering. I knew that there was a bigger reason why. I couldn't understand it. I was almost at a point of just hanging on to doing as much positivity as possible, because if I would 1 minute stop from that, I can fall into a very dark place. So I was really, really trying to really fight. Of course, there was tremendous grief, but at the end of the day, I had to ask myself, instead of why it happened, I have to ask, what would Hashem want me to do with the situation? What would my son want? He would obviously want me to honor him by doing classes, and that's that question, which I think we're going to talk about tonight. Why gets you nothing in life? Ma is what? What do I need to do from this? That shift from why to what, I think, has been one of the greatest things that have happened in my life. What would my son want? He would want me to honor him. He would want me to do classes. He would want me to change people's lives. Of course, you need tremendous amount of strength for this.
Right.
But strength comes to you when you humble. Strength doesn't come to you when you busy asking why.
Comes when you surrender.
When you surrender. And I know how to surrender. And that's actually tonight's class is going to be about surrendering. Just teaching people how to surrender. Because why am I not married? Why am I not married? Why am I not married? Instead of what needs to be done to get married. See the difference? Is actually, the name what is actually the name of Ma. It's actually the name that God uses to save people. Ma hayenu, ma hazdenu, Ma. Ma is the name of 45. All disaster in the world came from Chava. We know that Reb Nachman has a beautiful Torah in lesson 82. And he says that the name of Adam represents 45, represents order in your life. Chava is 19. She represents disorder, even the letters on disorder. So he says, whatever is, when your life is chaotic in your life, it's because the 26 is out. God's name is out. So the only way to go back to order is through humility, bringing back the 26. 26, 19 plus 26 is 45. It brings you back. So ultimately, the only way to bring normality in our lives is to surrender. When we don't understand something, we just have to surrender. And that's faith. Faith is, what are we talking about Emunah all day long? What's faith? Surrendering to a bigger picture, believing that there's something good out of this. And it's either you do it or you're going to suffer. So it's, to me, I'm like,
Got no choice.
I mean,
Rabbi Yossi Schwartz at this morning's
no choice.
Rabbi Yossi Schwartz at this morning's Tanya Chabura in North Woodmere, he taught that Chachma is the kayach of Ma, the power of what? Exactly what you're saying.
That line Ma, I've any time that I, even Makshava, a thought, what does Reb Nachman say? Chashuv Ma, go back to Ma. When things are chaotic, go back to humility. Humility fixes everything.
That in itself, you can meditate on that word for hours.
It's all, that's because what happens is when you're in surrender, you take the batteries out of the ego. But when you're in Lama, what are you doing?
Feeling it.
What you resist, persist.
Yeah.
So the fact that you're giving energy to all of this, that's the Lama. Why? And most people that end up asking why, never get to what needs to be done.
Just get angry.
They just get angrier.
They usually don't know why.
More
And if they do know why, they get angrier.
They get why. And then after, first it becomes a comfort zone. Then it's like, who caused me to ask why all the time? Why am I not married? Why am I not this? Why is my sister married? What kind of answers do you think you're going to get when you're asking in anger and injustice?
You speak a lot to the dating community, to the people who are single. I guess like if you could speak directly to them now on this podcast about this site, and we once had a guest on, David Bashafkin, and one of the things that he was passionate about was like, stop living life as you're labeled as single. Like, live your life, work on yourself, and you'll get, when the time comes, you'll get married. It could be 25, it could be 30, it could be 35, 40, 22, whatever it is. But just stop walking around with, I'm single, I'm in shidduchim, I need to. Could you speak, I guess, directly to the people who are in dating and how to surrender? How to surrender that?
It's very hard for them to surrender. But there's a few issues with dating that I've noticed. Number one is what stops guys. It's really the guy's job to go find the girl. According to the Arizal, it's the guy's job to find the second half. It's his mitzvah. And the problem is guys are getting very physical before they get married. Or they're getting into porn, they're getting into other things, God forbid. Again, we're not here to talk about, we're here to talk about real issues. Right. Because you never get changed. If you don't talk about real issues, you're not going to get changed. So that's one of the things that causes a person to get cooled off spiritually. And when you're cooled off spiritually, you're not getting married. Period. That's the problem with the guys. It's the getting too physical. And then the girls, sometimes they want to catch the guy, so they get physical and actually sabotage themselves. So getting physical before you get married is one of the number one way to sabotage a relationship. That's number one. Because that just causes klipot.
Like you said in the beginning, impurity leads to poverty.
It leads to poverty. But more importantly, why would all of a sudden a guy not want my ultimate self, I should want good things in life, right? Yeah. I should want to daven. I should want to go give charity. I should want to do good things in my life, correct? Mm-hmm. And I got married very quickly. After I got divorced, I got married really quickly. 35 days. I knew I didn't get physical before. I knew the formula, so I got married right away. There's a formula. There's a formula that works. But once you get physical, that makes you confused. And people are very confused with infatuation and love. So they're too infatuated. They're in infatuation. And then what happens? They They start very hot and they end up very cold. And they keep on doing this over and over again.
Without Wim Hof. That's tough.
Without him off. And then they blame God. Don't blame God what your ego did to you. And then they don't repair this over and over again. So when I speak on my podcast, I'm like, you guys got to get it right. Because otherwise, this is going to happen over and over again. So my tone is very different. It's telling them, listen, I have nothing to gain from you. It's a podcast. You want to listen? You don't want to listen, but I've been there.
Yeah.
And you want to get married? Then I need you to go into a detox. I need you to go into a Shmirat Habrit detox. I need you to cool off this impulsive if you want to heat up your vision. And for girls also, they can't, listen, if you're going to be anxious to get married, you're going to be anxious to have a baby. And then you're going to be anxious to have, to move to a house. And then you're going to be anxious to this. You can't, the problem with being too anxious, and when you have a lot of fear and you have insecurity, nobody wants to commit people who are desperate.
Well, how do you get rid of that? So how do you manage that anxiety?
To recognize, because people want what they can't have. So if the girl's too desperate, when am I going to get married? Just like, you go to a house. When are you going to buy the house? Nobody wants to buy the house. People want what they can't have. It's funny, after we told people that the event was sold out a week ago, there's people selling tickets to each other. It's like once it's sold out, I can't have it. That's when the desire comes.
I bought like 30 tickets. I'm scalping them outside.
Do you understand? People want what they can't have. So if girls are insecure and they have fear, and they make themselves too codependent on the guys, and too codependent. I'm not telling you to play games, but when you don't understand that for yourself and know your own worth, your opinion bases on other people. So they become, oh, I need to get married. And you become almost desperate. Mm-hmm. And nobody wants to marry desperate people.
You used a term there that I think would be helpful for anyone that's not familiar, this codependency. We see it a lot in this generation. Can you explain what is codependency?
Codependency is low self-esteem, depending on another person for your happiness, always needing somebody else. But that's because of an abandonment mentality. And that abandonment mentality could have came when you were a child or somebody's opinion. So you become codependent out of fear of getting abandoned, fear of failure. So you become codependent.
We give the keys to our own happiness to other people.
For example, let's say somebody had a bad childhood. All of a sudden they feel unworthy, or they feel low self-esteem. And next thing you know, they don't want to be abandoned. They don't want to be left alone. So they'll double their efforts to be loved. And next thing you know, they can sabotage that relationship.
Yeah. I'm curious if
only the person you should be codependent is God. Everything else is going to turn into a mess.
Nice. I'm wondering if in your work you encounter the dynamic, the intergenerational dynamic, where today's youth are, to our credit, I think, we are embracing these ideas and these modalities of living, and maybe parents and grandparents are a little bit more, set in their ways. And do you see the tension and the friction when that happens? Actually,
Rabbi Nachman says, don't bring me old people.
Sorry, guys.
I can't help you. He said about in one of his books. He says specifically, try to go after younger people, because they're not going to get it. They're just not going to. They're too stuck in their ways.
Who deals with the old people?
No, I have no idea. But once you're stuck in your ways and you have a habit of being stuck, it's almost very hard to stay young. That's why he says, stay young. Mm-hmm. Stay young means I'll do anything to win.
So 70-year-old can stay young, though.
70-year-old can stay young.
Oh.
If he has a young mind, then he's flexible and he's open-minded. Remember, our self-esteem and our humility is very, very connected. Is completely the opposite. When I have self-esteem, right, I'm open-minded. My perspective is open. But when I have low self-esteem, my perspective is very closed. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to listen to anybody. When I have healthy self-esteem, I'll do anything to win. If you tell me, listen, Gedale, I want you to lose 50 pounds. You got to do this. Oh, no, I don't do this. I just told you. This is what you need to do. No, I don't do this. I don't care if you're sensitive or not. You're asking me a question. How do you lose weight? You have to follow. You can't tell me basically being too sensitive is having a big ego in a nice way.
Right.
I find it fascinating to note that Rabbi Nachman was taken from us at a very young age. And there needs to be a message for someone that finds him or herself stuck in their ways. How do they chip away at that and be open?
Well, Rabbi Nachman, he got taken away because there was nothing left for him to do. He hit his goal. There's nothing else. He already hit to that. At least tzaddikim, they hit to certain goals. There's nothing left to do here for them to do. You have to recognize the reason why we have that short mind is because of our ego. Because at the end of the day, you tell me, I'll do anything to win. That means you have a healthy perspective. So we have to start being more open-minded. As our sages say, our creator is known by our gates. He's known by sharim, our gates. Open up the gates. Be open-minded. The same thing when you have trouble at work. Don't say it's always bad. We're so we because of a low perspective, all we do is close the gate. And this is the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. Reb Nachman says it's not just a temple; it's your mindset. He's saying every time you acquire dat, it's like building the Beit HaMikdash, and every time you lose dat, it's considered like you destroy the Beit HaMikdash. It's a consciousness thing. It's not just a temple.
Fascinating.
That is fascinating. I thought that was absolutely fascinating. So when I'm waking up at Hatzot to cry for the temple, I'm actually crying out for my own mindset. Help me. I mean, Shalom Bayit 101 is all about mindset. If you look at marriage logically, you lose your mind.
Yeah.
You would lose your mind.
Yeah, I wasn't agreeing. I was just saying, like, yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I'm just saying you would logically, there's no logic. It's about your wife has to feel that she's number one in your life. Even if you could do all the right things, if she doesn't feel it, you're not doing, you understand? It's a constant thing. So it teaches us that we have, okay, what can I change? Like, it's back to the same message of, instead of why is this happening to me? What can be done about it? And then you're going to get answers. It's just why to what?
Yeah.
Is a big deal, because that one takes you to the solution. Why keeps you in the problem? Why is this happening to me? Why am I making less money? Why is my neighbor? Why is he married? You're actually calling an injustice. Why are we stuck in Egypt? God's taking you out of Egypt. You're complaining about why you're stuck in Egypt.
Open your eyes, yeah.
So I've recognized that the areas of my life where I've been closed-minded, I've gone stuck there. So it forces me, even though it's difficult, this is why you first have to go into surrender and then ask, what can be done? Versus why? Why just keeps you there? Why is not surrendering? Why is resisting?
One more thing. We'll end off with this. If you had right now this mic in front of you, which you do have in front of you, it's not if, you do have a mic in front of you.
Super theoretical scenario.
That's the last question. See you guys. You have this mic in front of you and would look out this big window over here. What if I told you there are 1 million people sitting here and you're about to speak to them, you get to say one line. What line would you say to them?
Love yourself. Love yourself is the key to everything. Because the way you treat yourself is the way you treat others. The more you work on yourself, the more you treat others. But when you don't love yourself, you'll end up projecting on other people. Right. It's actually Reb Nachman 101 Azamra. Love yourself. Love yourself. Work on yourself. Loving yourself means putting effort on yourself. Because how you feel about yourself is the way you treat others. And that's here you can change the world. But when you don't love yourself, everybody else is the cause of your problems.
I would probably say Bridge Credit Solutions. What do you say? Gedale Fenster, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming in. Actually, I have one more thing I want to ask you, but this question is going to be for those exclusively on the Meaningful Minute app.
Oh, Nachi pulls another fast one.
Wow. We're going to ask a specific question.
So I have a podcast on
let's
Spotify.
What's the name of the
Gedale
podcast?
Fenster, Gedale Fenster. And I teach people how to, I teach people pretty much on how to Hizbodedut classes, etc.
People can also follow you on social media. There's a huge
But the podcast
WhatsApp
is really
community.
the important. But the WhatsApp is really the podcast.
Right. So people could search your name on Spotify, Apple.
That's the best to get because at the end of the day, I really need to build your mindset. It's one class. Unfortunately, first of all, your podcast is amazing.
Thank you.
And the 1 minute videos do pick people up.
Appreciate
There's
it.
no question, but we need more of strategy than motivation.
Right.
If we want to get to the next stage in our lives, we really need more strategic approach to our situations. We're too focused today on motivations. It's like we have a flat tire. Just give me some air.
Yeah.
that you can't go far just on motivation. What we need to focus on strategy and wisdom.
You need to have a nice steak, not just some.
Yeah, it's just the
That's a
society is too. It's where
Practical strategies.
you need a mindset. You know, you can destroy my house. I have a mindset to build it up.
Mm-hmm.
I have a blueprint already. No matter what you could do, I'm gonna get up.
Nice.
But if you don't have good bones, if you don't have a good structure,
Yeah.
all it takes is one bad day, you're gone. And that's what I'm worried about.
Wow. May our Creator continue to give you strength
Amen.
to empower His people.
Yeah, and that's again all I'm trying to do is trying to get the majority of the Jews back into a Torah podcast by combining the Tony Robbins, all that they hear outside. I'm gonna just show it to you where it's in the Torah.
Right.
So thank you again. It was amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Amazing.
That was cool, right?
Yeah. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Very zen.
Gedale Fenster. Check him out. Check him
Yeah,
out.
he's got a podcast. He's on YouTube. He's on social media. He's got a lot of stuff going on.
Also, we're all going to meet up in his backyard. We're going to do like a group guided meditation at 4 a.m. So I hope to see everyone there.
Yeah, in Miami.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
I
news
hope to
me.
not see with my eyes closed. I'd hope to experience it with everyone there.
God willing, God willing. But you guys know what to do. If you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and leave a 5-star review. Maybe leave a 5-star rating. Maybe leave a review if you're that type. If you're like so outgoing that you want to write some good words. Again,
Yeah, we appreciate the feedback.
we always do. We always do. And again, any feedback is always welcome. meaningfulpeoplepodcast@gmail.com. If you have any guest suggestions or any feedback of like what clothing we should be wearing during these interviews, you just send it to that email address and we'll probably take it up. Maybe. Or probably not, right?
Nachi may.
I may, whatever. I'm always looking up my apparel. Anyways, guys, thank you for tuning in this week, and we hope to see you again next week with another episode.
Later.
See ya.